Welcome to Holistic Wisdom Live, the power of conscious authenticity with my beautiful guest and friend, Jessica Zweig from Simply Be. Jessica, of course, as I said, is a dear friend. She's also an amazing CEO of Simply Be Agency, an international award-winning personal branding firm with offices in Chicago and Nashville, Tennessee, serving clients across the globe. She is the author of the #1 best-selling book, Be and No BS Guide to Increasing Your Self-Worth and Net Worth by Simply Being Yourself, published by Sounds True. Jessica was named a personal branding expert by Forbes 2020, most notable entrepreneur by Crain's, 2018 and 19 Stevie Award winner for Female Entrepreneur of the Year, and a top digital marketing to watch by Inc. On a mission to debunk the perception that personal branding is an act of vanity, Jessica believes that when done right, personal branding is an act of service, a social responsibility, and a positive investment towards a positive future. When you set yourself free to simply be, you set the world free. How beautiful is that? Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you for having me, Elaine. You are just so special to me. You have been such a catalyst, such a healer, such a mirror, such a partner to me on my journey. And I just love our sisterhood, and I'm honored to be on your podcast. It's so beautiful and full circle.
Thank you. You know what I just thought about? That I don't know if you remember, both of us have actually the same life path number of 11.
11.
Remember that?
Of course
Yeah, and it usually
yes.
happens later in life, right? Your full embodiment or landing into who you are, the authenticity of who you are comes later. So there's lots of road bumps. And I wanted to take people who don't know who you are on the beautiful journey of letting the world know. How did you come to find your authentic voice?
Well, I believe that if we are going to be teachers of any subject, we must also be the student. And, I can't validly come on to a platform and talk about what authenticity is if I don't fully know what inauthenticity also feels like. And so for a long period of my adult life, I was living in a state of being out of alignment. I give my 20-year-old self a ton of credit, and my early 30-year-old self a ton of love and compassion, but it wasn't a straight line to where I am. And I think that we all know this, but when we are empowered in our light and fully shine it, it's because we've gone through the dark, or we understand the shadow side. And so for the majority of my 20s and 30s, I struggled. I started a business when I was 26. It did well critically, but financially on the inside, it was kind of a mess. I ran it for 7 years, learned a lot of hard knock lessons. It was during that 7-year period that I contracted an autoimmune trigger, my sinuses, which you are familiar with, and chronic fatigue, brain fog, candida, like just a whole bunch of physical ailments, but also was struggling emotionally and mentally. Was basically started my career as an actress, went into entrepreneurship accidentally, started this online magazine for women. It blew up. And I was sort of this it girl, this cool girl that was playing out a lot of my insecurities from being the uncool girl in middle school and high school. And all of a sudden, here I was in my late 20s, like the girl that could get into any nightclub she wanted, any night of the week, skip the line. Like I thought I was somebody. And a lot of that unconscious ego, which was really just wounding, just kind of piled up. And by that time, I was 33 years old, after I'd been running that magazine for 7 years. I was sick, very physically sick. I was depressed, having panic attacks on a constant basis. And I was also financially broke. I had almost $100,000 in credit card debt, I had borrowed money from my then boyfriend, who is now my husband, to help me pay my rent for half the year. I had to ask my parents to help me pay my phone bill because they were going to turn off my phone. I couldn't even afford $150 to AT&T. Like, I was broke, and I was 33. And the shame, and the self-loathing that like came with that, all while the whole city of Chicago thought I was killing it, that I was this cool girl, that I had all this success, that I was somebody, quote unquote. And I just felt like nobody. And it wasn't until I had a full-on kind of breakdown to break through, like a true rock bottom, where I had to get really real with myself, take truth, full radical responsibility for my life, cut out toxic people, cut out toxic things like what I was putting in my body, certain energy. I really took myself on the path of healing my life, that I was able to really shed so much of that inauthenticity.
Mhm.
And I committed to that path, and it changed everything. It really was the dawn of my spiritual awakening. And I've been spiritual since I was a little girl. Like, I remember talking to angels and goddesses when I was 6, but at 33 was really this climax of just no longer being able to live that like, when you're living out of alignment, it's temporary. You can't do it forever. It's going to catch up with you after a certain point, and you have no choice but to course correct. At least I think most people do. And when I was really able, I think the moral of the story here, Elena, is when I was able to own that story out loud, everything changed for me professionally and personally too. And I became so enthralled with the results, if you will, that I saw from being myself and telling the truth about my life, and that it actually didn't take away from my credibility, that it only made me more relatable. That's when I started to form a business around helping people do the same. And then everything changed. I was able to, scale a multi-7-figure business from that quite quickly, get into right relationships, cut out my business partner. I found you right around that time, and you helped me get healthy. And so, yeah, I mean, it's my life's work, is to really allow people to be authentic in their own platforms and in their own life. But that doesn't mean it's ever done. And it doesn't mean it's meant to be perfect. It actually means the opposite.
That's so beautiful. In a way, the way life is, it reminds me of somebody else I interviewed, and actually Dr. Jacob Lieberman, and he talked about, somebody asked him what does his daughter do? And he said, my daughter is a rose. And since then, I've been using this phrase, and I have to say that we're all, including you, are beautiful roses that are blooming through life. And at first we're these buds, and then we open up, and that's really you being you in the most beautiful, profound way. There's no other rose like you, right? And we all have our authentic signature that's unlike anyone else. And I actually remember 4 years ago, you told me you were going on stage or you were going to speak, and you said, I feel so inauthentic, like you had a complex. What did you call it? You called it, that's it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, wow, like to me, because to me, I knew you were in your mastery, right? And that is really what it means to me to be authentic, is to be a master of your own destiny, a master of owning your stories, whether it's light or shadow. And I thought that was so vulnerable to share that. And I think it's so powerful because you have such a beautiful way of authentically sharing everything about your life. And that was the most shocking thing to me, of like, wow, you just go publicly and say it. But it makes it okay for other people to also share their truth and their stories, and allow for that imperfection, which is so perfect and beautiful, to be part of who we are, and for the world to see that. And I think that is the hard part for me, that I found as an entrepreneur on social media. How do you put yourself out there, being vulnerable, truthful, without being, as you said, without being in the vanity and the ego, which ego is an important player, because you're here to showcase yourself in a way. But coming from a place of authenticity and full integrity. And that is the part that I want to also talk about. That I found it initially extremely challenging to, as a business person, to be able to put my voice out there. It is scary.
Yeah, it is scary. And most people feel intimidated by social media for that reason alone. And, I joined social media in 2008 and I went to school for theater. And so when I transitioned from theater to entrepreneurship, I sort of saw social as just a different type of stage, right? So I could express myself very easily and it came very naturally to me. And over the course of my career, I've really, because it's so not my mindset, I can do it pretty effortlessly and be myself, be vulnerable. But there was a tipping point that I remember experiencing at the beginning stages of my social media journey, which I never forgot, which I teach all the time, which is really the foundation of our work at Simply Be. And to answer your question, I was going through a really horrible breakup with an ex-boyfriend. This was, back in like 2011, 12. And I was getting on social media, on Facebook specifically at the time, and was sharing my pain. I was kind of putting out passive aggressive messages, hoping he would see it, kind of trying to show off how happy I was without him, even though I wasn't. And somebody pulled me aside. I'll never forget this. An older woman in corporate America who is like a friend who was just looking out for me. And she was like, Jessica, I want to tell you that what you're doing isn't a good look. She said, the internet and social media is not a place to process. You have your therapist's office for that. You have your friends for that. The internet is the place for you to share value. And you can talk about your breakup if you want, but not while you're in it. Talk about it in a year from now when you've healed it and you have something of value to offer to other women who are going through breakups. And I never forgot that, because at the end of the day, how we get ourselves out of the vanity, like fear of the vanity projection, is by taking our phone or our computer, and when we sit down to draft a post a picture, asking ourselves, what is the other person who's going to read this on their phone going to get from this? Like, what's the value? And if you're promoting, say, your course, that's the value, because what you've got is an amazing thing to share. If you're promoting your new website because you need to promote it, but you believe the website's beautiful and people are going to come and they're going to get something out of it. If you're sharing a story about a loss or a breakup or a new job that you got and you want to amplify it, like how can you use that to inspire people to go after and hunt for their dream job or get through their breakup? So it's a reframe, and it's a conscious practice of how we show up on social in service and still be authentic and still be vulnerable. And it's a very fine line that a lot of people toe and struggle with. But if I were to give you like the litmus test of like how to strike that balance, just ask yourself, like, what is the person on the other side of their phone going to receive from this? What value? And if you can't answer that question, reframe the post or don't post it.
That's a beautiful advice. Okay. Yes, makes sense.
I mean, you're chock full of value, Elena. I see all your stuff. I open all your emails, everything you share. I mean, you're such a beautiful example. And I only say this because people who are listening to the show know you and follow your personal brand. And you're sharing your life and you're sharing your beautiful face and you're sharing your beautiful beingness, but you're adding value in everything you share. It's really, really clear and consistent and branded, but authentic.
Thank you for saying that, because sometimes I feel like, okay, I have people that will come in and say, oh, I didn't realize you're into health and wellness. Well, I've been in health and wellness industry for 25 years or more. Or they'll say, oh, I didn't know you're doing energy, vibration, frequency. So it's always walking a fine line, because what I realize, and I'm sure it's the same thing for you, as you consciously evolve and you blossom into this beautiful rose, right? It's never stagnant. It never stays the same. It never stands still. So the branding that somebody has is an evolutionary process taking people on a journey of wherever that person is, and it's never at a standstill point.
No, no, it's not. And that's the beautiful thing about a personal brand is its evolution, and you're meant to change. And there's no there. I always say that, like, your destination is never going to, it's always going to be a year out, 4 days out, 4 months out. And part of what makes, I think, people shine so much on social, if you will, is like taking people along for that journey. And like, are they going to capture every little thing about you? Like you just said, I do vibrational frequency and I'm in health and wellness, but someone might just come online and like love what you're wearing every day and want to follow that, or love that you're a mom and relate to you because you have this beautiful relationship with your kids. Like, you never know what people are going to hook onto. And if you're being yourself, it's all good. It's all for your audience, because you're multidimensional and you're dynamic. And part of the struggle people have sometimes is like, what do I share and how do I stay authentic and not give away too much? And that's really where my work at Simply Be comes in, and what I wrote my whole book about, what we help our clients do, is really strike that balance of that expert value and what we're like selling and what we do for a living, and who we are as a person and our personal passions, and how do we in our humanity, and how do we combine it all into a clear message that people can really resonate with. And I think the point I really want to make is that, and I think you're making it too, is that it can change because you change. And that's the beautiful part about, in fact, building a personal brand, is its evolution.
Yes, and I want to touch up on something that is more important now than I feel even 10 years ago, because the feminine, the creative essence is coming and rising in such a fast pace, right? And it has to do with exactly what you're doing in your branding. And that is why beingness is the new doingness. And I think for women, especially in business, it is a hard concept to grasp. And that is because we're so trained in do, that being can be a challenge. I know you and I have talked about it, even on your own journey of like taking the time off, right? So beingness to me is part of a very creative, flowy process. And in order to do, you have to allow yourself to be. And I just want to hear what you're seeing from your own experience, also working with so many different brands, of how the beingness is the new doingness.
Yeah, it's so wonderful that you asked this. I just released my new workbook, which I think you probably saw. And there's this whole exercise I have called Being versus Doing, where I outline all the being values, which are really the divine feminine values, and all the doing values, which are the divine masculine values, and have you, without you knowing kind of what they are, identify where you lean. What values are you really embodying more of? I teach this in corporate workshops a lot. And most women, when I teach to workshops of women, have traditionally, this is such a poignant question and it's such a poignant answer I'm about to share. I'm so excited to share this. I just kind of realized this because I've been running Simply Be now for like 6 years. I've been teaching this for a while. The beginning, it was always out of balance. Way more women were like doing, assertion, leadership, action, going, creating, problem solving, firefighting, etc. And then the stillness and the beauty and the empathy and the compassion and the, communion was always like this. Like, very few women would identify with those values because we're not trained by the paradigm of the matrix to value those. And now it's become, the scale is starting to tip. Women are actually embodying, or at least seeing, like, values in and of themselves with those types of frequencies more than ever before. I have certainly been on that journey. You've known me a while. Like, I've been in a lot of masculine hustle go mode building my business. And just in the last few months, I actually got like the one in Egypt and like the biggest download, like the divine feminine frequency came through me in every cell of my body, changed my DNA, like upgraded me to really see clearly, as plain as day, as a matter of fact. It's like, oh, no. The point of this life is to enjoy it, to have fun, to be in your pleasure, to be in your play, and that it's not supposed to be hard. And in fact, when you allow that in, so much more manifests, so much more comes through because you're in the flow, you're in alignment, you're not pushing, you're not gripping, you're not convincing the world of anything. You're just being yourself and allowing and receiving. And I think that, I personally think that given where we are in the history of the last few years, like the last 3 years, 2020, 21, 22, and the lunar calendar, they were all masculine animals, like the ox, the rat, and the tiger. 23 is the year of the rabbit, which is the first yin animal in 3 years. And that makes it checks out, right? The last 3 years have been like, whoa. But now everyone, and I think if they're conscious of it or not, most people are not even that conscious of it, but are like ready for the beingness. They're ready for the feminine frequency to be the norm, to go a little softer, and to not have to love. This healer in Egypt told me, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. He said, you need to learn to love your pleasure more than you love your suffering. Because I think we become kind of addicted to our suffering, the stress, the overwhelm, the doing, like the no time, the pain it is to be a human. No. This human life, this human experience is so fucking fun. So, I don't know if I can swear. It's so fun. It's meant to be a joyride to be in this body. And we don't focus on it. And I think people are just so sick of not focusing on it. Like, no, I want to feel good. I'm ready to feel good. And that's your job, is to feel good. And you don't have to do much to feel good. You get to just be in this present moment, in this present experience, and enjoy it, no matter what that is. And I think when we really step into that, that's when we become magnetic. It's when we're in our light, when we're happy, when we're in our joy, we shine the light, like people can feel us, and we become this true magnet for what we're attracting. And that can only happen when we're being, not when we're doing. And this is the future. And I'm seeing it in my own life, as well as being reflected in corporate spaces, which is so interesting, because it's a collective rising, to use your language, where it's a shift.
It's totally a shift. And with you, if I can reflect and back with you, because when you were in Chicago, I remember we were working together, and you were totally in that masculine, just grind. And the fact that you've made a decision to move to Nashville, which is such a feminine energy. And I think it's so beautiful. I'm actually so happy for you. And that's what I've been cheering. Remember, I kept saying, you need nature.
For years you've been telling me that. Yes.
Finally. So this is so great. And by the way, I'm the year of the rabbit. This is my year.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, of course you are.
Yeah. And what are you based on the Chinese zodiac?
I'm a rooster.
You're a rooster.
Yeah, I'm the
Okay.
Rooster.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's yin.
I don't
Probably
know
not.
either, but I just I'm the rabbit. So now I want to talk about authenticity as the driver for success in the new economy. So right now and this is such an important time, because we're going into, or kind of through, the recession. The world is resetting in many ways, right? We're going through this massive reset, which I think is so needed, because we're going from the very masculine driven, as we were talking about, into a much more feminine. And it does take breakdown of the systems in order to build something new. And this is the part I want to talk about, that because authenticity has to do with the embodiment of your divine creativity, your divine creative essence, what it is that inspires. We're all being called to say yes to being creative, yes to expressing our beautiful inspiration that flows through every single human being, every single being on this planet, right? So this reset has to happen. And I want to see what your advice for people is, this embodiment of this authenticity and diving into this kind of new economy, right? Succeeding in the new economy. And what does that look like to you? Because you do, how many people work for you, by the way, Jessica?
I have about 25 people.
25 people. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. What does it look like in your, you could say, your own universe, right? Because we're all little universes connecting with each other, the micro into the macrocosm.
Yeah.
And where do you see that shift moving towards?
Well, it's such a timely question because, there were mass layoffs at the end of 2022. I had to reorg my company. I let a few people go. You know, and it's really interesting to kind of see what's shaken out by that and kind of what's flown in. Like businesses are like nature, right? The working world is like nature. It's not a straight linear line like the Matrix wants it to be. It's like a cycle of nature. It dies and it rebirths and it contracts and it expands and it goes in cycles and circles, not straight lines. And so just remembering that if you're going through some sort of transition or you had something unexpected happen to you, and I really had to embrace that. And I think people are learning to embrace that. And they're learning that the key to sort of survival in that cycle is always staying true to themselves. It was so hard to let those people go at my company, so hard, but it was more out of alignment to keep them for me. And it was more true to myself to let them go. And while it was hard in the moment, it's reaped its benefits now, fast forward a few months later, and those few people that I had to let go that I loved have found something more alignment for them. And part of what's really I see working in the new job economy is people really, frankly, I'm not just saying this, focusing on building their personal brands, knowing how to tell their own story, knowing how to stand in their story. One of the most beautiful posts I saw go viral last year, at the end of last year, was an employee that got let go from Facebook, from Meta. And she was like on the legal team. She was like inner counsel at Facebook, and they let her go. And she wrote this long form post on LinkedIn explaining what it felt like and how afraid she was and how she knew she was going to land on her feet. But she was one of those affected, and it went hundreds of thousands of people reshared it. It went viral. And I was like, that's where what people are figuring out is that they own their own narrative, not the companies they worked for. And when I hire people, I want them to own their narrative. I know that they're not going to be at my company forever. They're coming to advance their own careers. And if I can help them advance themselves while they help me advance my business, it's a win-win. And I'm going to hire people who are authentically true to that path and their own stories. And yes, check the box of the job and can do the skills, etc. But I want to be around real people who are enigmatic, who care, who bring something different, who aren't just following status quo and looking to punch a clock. And so I think that is, and I'll tell you this, I'm getting, I work with a lot of corporate clients. I've been very fortunate to work with companies like Google and Pinterest and Verizon and Salesforce and Motorola and Heineken and Beam Suntory and Bank of America. I can go on and on. All of these companies come to Simply Be and companies like Simply Be because they know, whether it's the leaders that are hiring us or their employees that are demanding it, that the future of business is human, that the future of work environments have to be authentic. They have to embrace authenticity. They have to encourage authenticity. They have to empower their talent if they want them to stay, to be themselves at work. And so I think it's a total turn of the tides. I'm so excited for it. I think, unfortunately, big companies in corporate America and big governments are the places that rule the world to some degree. So let's move the needle inside of those environments with more authenticity. And I see it happening in the micro, to use your words, and as like a trickle up effect. And I think that if you're listening and you're like, how do I stand in my story, read my book? But it's really, I think, the time to fully unapologetically be yourself at work and in this economy.
A very interesting aspect you touch upon, it's about being human. And as we're moving towards the Aquarian age, which has to do with artificial intelligence. And it didn't occur to me to ask you this question before, but I will ask you now. How do you see the integration? Because I'm already seeing this happening of, for example, things like Jasper or ChatGPT, that is also taking jobs away, creative jobs from copywriters, you could say, right? And you can use those, and they're pretty crazy, amazing. Have you, by the way, checked into that?
No, I should.
Yeah, definitely you should. It will blow your mind. So anyway, I'm just curious to see how, we're moving towards the future of humanity and having this artificial intelligence that's coming in to help support, of course, the human beings. But there is a fine line in that. So you haven't used it in your company just yet.
Not that AI. We've certainly used AI softwares that have helped us with like graphics.
Yes, but this is writing.
It's super exciting, which is like also kind of taking away a job from a graphic person.
Totally.
But I was just listening to a podcast about this the other day, and actually it's so funny. Like I met you in Jamaica at A-Fest in 2017. And just, I'll never forget that. We like met in an elevator, and then I saw you at on the dance floor, and then we became friends like a year later, but I never forgot meeting you because your energy is just so powerful. But I remember seeing Nicole Bradford speak at that conference. Do you remember her talk? She was like a scientist, kind of technologist in the VC space in Silicon Valley, where like spirituality meets and consciousness is kind of meeting up with technology. And now this was like 6 years ago at this point. A lot has changed since then. But I remember her talk and her saying kind of at the end, like, technology can't live with, we are as a society going to come to a place where we can't live without technology, where it's like such an in-baked part of our lives. And at the same time, technology can't live without humanity. And we have to have both. And we have to find that harmony. And, here's my philosophy on all of it. I'm just going to zoom way up. I just was in Mexico with my family, and I spend like the whole week with my nephews who are 6 and 7. They're like pure. And I'm like, in 50 years, they're going to be in jobs of ideally influence and power, right? A lot of these old white men in the government in Washington, D.C. are going to die. They're going to die. And there's going to be new generations that start running things. And I think that generation, it's called the Alpha Gen, Gen Z, they have integrity. Like they want this world to be a good, humane, inclusive, loving place. Like, I mean, it's a blanket statement, but it's kind of my sense. They care. They're far more dialed in to climate change and to, LGBTQIA, the experience. Like it's insane. And I have to trust that the future is in the hands of these young people who have, they're different starseeds. You know this, Alina. They're coming in from other planets to like help this place. So I'm just trusting that like the generations and generations that are going to inherit this planet after we're gone, are going to be intentional with what comes of AI.
Well, you probably have not seen the episode. I'm going to reflect it back to you. Alejandra and I did an entire series of different generations and their levels of consciousness. And absolutely, yes, Alpha Gen is the generation that comes in at a frequency of 500. So they are by far, and you can say in thousands and thousands of years, they're the first generations that is born conscious, that are incarnate conscious, and they are going to be responsible for a completely different future. So yes, we took this conversation into a whole space.
Yeah, I love it though. I'm like, I feel that from my nephews, like they're my closest little children in my life at this point. And there's something different about them.
Yeah, they're pure and beautiful. And yes, and it's not to say that all the previous generations are not, but I feel that we have a lot more based on all the frequencies that we've read, previous generations have a lot more karmic things to go through, and this brand new alpha generation does not. And this is the fascinating part. So, yes. So I also trust that the future is going to be bright and beautiful. Absolutely. And based on the consciousness, 2045 is going to be a big shift in the human collective consciousness. So we're not that far off. No. No, not at all. So it's coming up. All right, let's go back into so we don't deviate, from some of the questions, but I'm so happy to expand on all of that too. How do you grow your business without losing yourself? And that is really the key. Well, I want to hear from you, because it's always a balance act, right? But how do you really grow your business in a big way? Right now, you have so many people that you work with, and still keep sane and beautiful and smiling. I know you're finally getting you're healthy, which is like, you're in such a different place, by the way. I just have to say, like when we first met, you were so swollen, like you were puffy, you just weren't feeling well. You look amazing. And I want to talk about that, because our physical health is also an absolute reflection of how do we live our life day to day, right? Our habits, our patterns. And as a business person, it's really key, right? To how do you not lose yourself in the process of growth?
Yes. I mean, listen, I've been on a journey. It hasn't been a straight line. I have lost myself to my business many times. And I think that I'm in a really amazing place right now. And I think it was like a quantum shift going to Egypt, frankly, and we've talked about it, but like you're going to potentially get swept up when your business is growing and it's successful and it's fun and it's got its own, passion points for you. But it's first of all very hard to differentiate. Like, my business is not me, it's a part of me, but it's not me. I created it, it's separate from me. And really having the right people around you. I think that's really one of the things that I've learned over time. And it took me 6 years. I've been running Simply Be for almost 6 years exactly this month, to finally get to a place where I have structure, where I have management and leadership in place that's the right structure, the right leadership, the right management that can really get me out of the fray, that allows me to create some personal space to have more of that beingness be my baseline and how I spend most of my time. I will say you also need a team of like healers. I think it's really hard to figure out on your own what's the best path forward with your health if you're not an expert in wellness or holistic healing. I'm not. I can read enough on Google and, but Western, I speak, with delicately here, but I think I know your audience. Western medicine failed me on an epic degree. And by the time I came to you, Elena, I had suffered chronic sinusitis, fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, depression from it all for like 6-7 years straight. I had surgery on my sinuses. Nothing was working. I had been on probably 15 rounds of antibiotics. And no one had ever talked to me about dairy. Oh, like in the doctor's office. And so I learned how to heal my body from the inside out with the power of food, with the power of minerals, supplements, water, rest, sunshine, vitamin D, movement, gentle movement, like breath work. I didn't even know how to do breath work when we first met. I didn't know how to like fully inhale or exhale, so I say all this, like, you have to be proactive to not lose yourself in your business. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you love what you do, and what you do starts working and it starts working really well, the chances of you getting lost in it are high. And so you just have to really employ people, whether it's friends, mentors, healers, or a team. And also, holding yourself accountable to being in integrity with your boundaries, with your time, with what you put in your mouth. Like, all of those things are up to you at the end of the day. And I just think really we aren't meant to do it alone. Your business isn't an island, you're not an island. So rely on the people who can really help you stay accountable. And the last thing I'll say is, like, it's really good to hang out with people who've known you your whole life, or like your partner, like your best friend who's going to make fun of you, like who's going to just remind you, like, this isn't the holy grail of the universe, Jessica, your business. Like, like there's other things in life that you can think about that matter to spend your time with. Like, don't just run a business, have a life. And I think that also helps you not lose yourself in business when you keep those people really close to you.
That's beautiful. It's really a holistic approach to life. Really. It is, because everything in our life is connected. When we're not well, our business is really not going to do well. And the last question I have for you, what does your day look like? Like your happy day. What does your happy day look like?
Oh, I'll tell you exactly my happy day.
Tell me.
So these days, my happy day is I wake up around, I don't know, 6:30 or 7. I do drink coffee, but it's just a black cup of coffee and a big glass of water. And I take my probiotic. I get like my supplements out of the way. And then I journal and meditate. A perfect day, journal, meditate. I do a little bit of gentle Pilates, and then I take a walk in nature. And that's my meditation, is my walk. And then I come home, I shower, and I'm ready to kind of start my day by like 9:30, 10. Like I've really stopped being so rigid that I have to start my day at a certain time. I just kind of flow in. Take a series of meetings with my team, do podcast interview, talk to a potential client, teach a workshop. What's on my schedule lately is just stuff that really fuels me and is in my genius zone. And then I try to call it like no later than 5. Sometimes I end at 4 or 3. Try and, spend time with my dogs. I'll take a hike in beautiful trails of Nashville. And after work is like chill time with my husband. We either cook, we order in, we'll, go out to dinner. Maybe I'll have like a girl date night or whatever. If I'm really feeling nourishing and want to be with myself, I'll like go to a yoga class, or I'll take a sound bath, or I really am trying to like find things that bring me joy and fuel me. Go to bed by 10, read a book. I love reading. I mean, like my days are really gentle. And they're productive at the same time. There's a lot of beingness and a lot of doingness. And I feel so good. I feel the best I've felt maybe ever. And I can say that to you, Elena, because you've really seen me on the other side of that. And I kind of feel like, I don't know, proud to share it with you. Like you're,
I have tears in my eyes.
Feel that.
I'm so genuinely happy for you, and I can see it in you. And if people really saw you even 4 years ago, 3 years ago, what an amazing transformation you have been through. And you are an absolutely beautiful rose. Oh, and thank you so much. I have tears in my eyes. I'm so happy to see you glowing and healthy. And gosh, thank you so much for sharing yourself, your light, and inspiring millions of people who are thinking of perhaps starting their business, but not having the courage, or maybe feeling lost or feeling overwhelmed, because we all have been there. I've been there myself too. So I know what it's like to just get absolutely into the grind of things and then like losing yourself. And it's absolutely terrible. So thank you so much for sharing your beautiful light and your wisdom. You're coming into the age of wisdom.
I know, 41. I love you. And thank you for those tears in your eyes, because you really are like an older sister to me, like a mentor, like someone I just have so much respect for. I really look up to you and admire you. And you have been such a teacher to me of how to live my light. You really saw my light from day one. Yes. And it means everything to me. So when you wanted me to be on your podcast, I was like, duh, of course. And thank you for this conversation. absolutely beautiful. You're beautiful. And this community you've built is beautiful. And it's been a real treasure to speak to them today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll post all of the links where people can find you. If people are looking to build out their companies, their brands, Jessica is the go-to person. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too.
Oh.